Hey everyone, Press Dior here, and this is Langrisser Mobile. As the weekend approaches, I figured I'm going to go ahead and make a video about a few other things. There's some people who've asked a few questions, and I gave some feedback and got some feedback in return. Also, there's a few other things I just wanted to talk about that really wasn't going to fit exactly into the format for my my Apex runs. So first thing, I talked about mercenaries last time. And I actually, after recording all the videos that Monday morning, I actually got a message in the mail that said, "Hey, one of your units got picked for a mercenary," and they gave me 5 Trinity vouchers. 5 Trinity vouchers is a really nice reward. So I was like, "Oh, cool. Let's see what I got for." Oops, that's the wrong one. It would be Arena, Apex. And I was like, alright, well, let's see team formation. What mercenary did they pick? And I was like, alright, well, could it be Mylana? I was like, nope, that's someone from Langrisser. Close? Nope, from Baldea. I was like, well, it's definitely not my Freya, because my Freya is level 70. It's like, alright, my Liana, nope, from Rhaegar. Okay, Tiaras, nope, Europort. I was like, my Sophia? And yep, they picked my Sophia of all people. So Sophia is a good healer. There's no question about it. She's got access to Rewind, which is a unique ability that kind of resets people's cooldowns, which is unique to her essentially. I think the only other character that can really reset cooldowns is I don't even remember his name. I'll remember it in a bit. Oh, Gizarov. Yeah, I think Gizarov has abilities to reduce cooldowns with his faction buff. I was like, okay. I mean, my Sophia is sort of built, but she was built purely for PvE. Like, she doesn't have any arena stats. So one thing to note, if your character gets picked for as a mercenary, they take a snapshot of that character right then and there, and any edits that you make to the character are not applied to this version. So once I noticed, I was like, okay. Like the first thing I did after I noticed they picked my Sophia was I went and checked her enchants, and she doesn't have arena enchants because I was never intending on using her for arena. So one thing I did do during the week was I went ahead and just dumped all my spare arena enchants on my other characters that are quote-unquote geared up. Because essentially all my female characters are geared up, even characters I generally don't use besides, guild battles and stuff. It's generally not the most efficient way of doing gear. Usually people have gear sets that they pass around other characters, but I don't like dealing with that. So every one of my female characters has gear, essentially. So for future reference, I'll be sure to update arena chance so the next time I get picked, it's not as horrible. Now, granted, the way they seem to pick mercenaries is it's kind of like a tier system almost. In some cases, like they'll start very high with as like a high 6,000, 7,000s, and then gradually as it goes, it'll gradually go down. So they kind of get a range for it. But yeah, I don't see anyone ever going to be using my Sophia unless they're just like bottom tier, level 60 characters that just need units, period. So. But still, it was kind of neat that I got picked. I was not expecting it. I don't even know what my ranking is right now. Yeah, that's not going to remain. 162, that's not going to happen. Alright, so another thing I'll go ahead and talk about is... I did get a Leon. The banner for this week is Evelyn, Leon, and Bernhardt. And the only reason I got Leon was simply because I needed... I was going the entire time without... certain characters will require certain requirements for unlocking their bonds. And those bonds will affect, your ability to build up that character. So for the entire time that I've been using Lana, I had her strength bond unlocked, which of course boosts her attack and skill. But I couldn't unlock toughness without Leon, so the entire time I had reduced HP defense and M defense, which in PvE is not the worst, but in PvP when you're dealing with things like thorns, for example, it makes her rather squishy. So I'm hoping that now that I've fully updated her bonds, that she'll be at least a little bit more durable. I've also given her some additional HP enchants, or boosted them for better rolls to kind of boost her HP further. So hopefully thorns won't kill her like last time. And I guess so. Like I mentioned before, I did get some feedback. Some people asked about my Lana. I did answer it in video, and I went ahead and answered it in comment as well, that part of the reason I'm using a bow Luna is simply there's so many flyers, especially for females, that I just wanted to have a bow character that's mobile. The disadvantages are definitely apparent. For one, she's not flying, even despite the image here. And not being able to fly definitely limits her mobility, especially on that particular map that's in the sky map essentially, or the map that has the river in the middle. That being said, it really kind of depends on what you want your Luna to do. In my case, I guess one thing that I've mentioned this before, the disadvantages of going the all-female route is, it's not just that I only have access to certain faction buffs. It's the fact that those faction buffs are on my DPS. So in the case of like I mentioned before, the top tanks are Landius and Juggler here, and they both have a faction buff. There's also Ledin here, who's also a tank, not really one that you would use for PvP, but he is a tank that also has a faction buff. Bernhard can be used as a tank in a pinch, and also has a faction buff, and Ultimarilla can also technically guard as well if you wanted, though you wouldn't do that, who also has a faction buff. So like literally all the faction buffs are on essentially defensive units. I mean, you can attack with, like I mentioned before, you can definitely attack with Juggler and Landius, but their main purpose is usually to soak hits. And so while they're soaking hits, you may as well, have them apply buffs to everyone else. In the case of the female units, only Freya has a faction buff. In fact, I didn't even mention Freya had a faction buff during my last videos because I just don't use her for a faction buff in PvP. Part of that's simply because I don't have a lot of origins on my team. I have Freya, Tiaris, and Luna. And Luna, of course, has her own faction buff. It's Princess. That's a little bit more varied. In the future, she might be able to get some more out of that faction buff when I get things like Deedlit, or start swapping in other characters like Young Jessica or possibly Alestriel. But like I said, my options for faction buffs are on my DPS. So a lot of people who use Luna usually have her as a flyer, and they'll have her with a Curse Spear and literally just smash them against the opposing tank. Luna flying with the proper buffs can definitely take on a tank really well. And even if she fails at taking out a tank, her Curse Spear could potentially silence and potentially prevent healing. Which means the follow-up will be just as nasty. And so what the opponent will do is, she's super mobile, especially as a flyer. They'll just launch her as a missile right at the tank and try to use her to get the kill. In my case, I don't really need that. I mean, it would be nice to have that, but I could kind of do that with Clarettes and other characters. The main purpose for Luna in my case is my tanks are generally pretty vulnerable to magic, especially, I've had to usually, in most of my fights, I've had to deal with a Buzzle or, a Rachel with single target. I have to respond to that because two of my three tanks can't even guard against magic. So literally, I have to have ways to negate that damage as best as possible. So Luna's wind protection only applies if the friendly units are nearby. So I like to keep her near the main group, and making her range kind of makes her fit that role a little bit better. Now, as for mobility issues, since I kind of want to keep her closer to the group anyway, I'm not too worried about it. And I usually want her to be relatively close to the group anyway with Wind God Realm, because that gives my slower units some additional mobility. Also will help take care of some of the terrain issues. So that's kind of the reason I use Luna. Obviously, it's maybe not the best option. Now, she is equipped with an Olar's Bow, which gives her additional range, including her soldiers. So even though I'm using Demon Hunters, I could potentially use Holy Pegasus at 2 range, and they'll actually attack. In the future, I might eventually build up Bolt Rangers. I really should if I'm going to be doing PvP. But right now, I'm using Demon Hunters because it was just kind of more flexible option, especially in PvE, because it's very useful in PvE. So yeah, that's kind of the part of the reason I use Luna, and it's just kind of the thought process of having to deal with the restrictions I've put on myself. It definitely made some interesting matches. Like I mentioned before, in the previous seasons, like literally I had to pick a tank first because I only had 2 tanks, and they would just immediately ban my Luna and Shafaniel. So having these matches kind of see what Luna could do has been pretty useful. I may also be switching over to Shafaniel now that she's 6 stars, and seeing if what sort of stuff I can do with her as well. But Luna is kind of a safe choice because, like I mentioned before, the reduced damage by 30%, or reduced magic damage by 30% is just so useful. It's part of the reason why Claret was able to just tank a full attack against Bozal, which definitely ensured my control of the match. Also, I think I have to do this real quick before I forget, and then we'll go ahead and dive into. I'll show off a World Arena fight. I generally don't care much for World Arena. That being said, I definitely still do it, even if you're not interested in PvP. The neat thing about World Arena is after 3 losses, you will fight the AI. And the AI is really easy, usually. So even through persistence, you'll get your daily wins and get your daily rewards for that. That being said, it's best to try to at least go for Silver 3, which is what I do. Because that tends to get you a little bit better rewards. Silver 3 gets you this, and then as far as my server is concerned, I'm 73rd, even though I'm only just in Silver 3. Just nobody does PvP except for Rolly, apparently. That being said, it does have some battle reports. The way World Arena works in Bronze and lower, it's just a standard, you pick your units and that's it. At Silver 3, you'll kind of go into they'll show the battle map, and both sides will pick a unit or 2 and alternate, kind of like the ban pick phase, but without the banning. I may try to go higher than Silver 3 in the future, but right now I kind of use this as just an opportunity to see how certain units work. It used to be very much a lot of cheese strats, like rush down AoE, but since they added the Apex maps to the World Arena maps, which are much bigger, it does kind of give me opportunities to kind of mess around with certain units. And I've started getting away from certain strats and kind of been implementing characters I don't really get much screen time with, like Zerida. So it's kind of just stuff I've been messing around with. Anyway, let's see. I don't remember who I used, so give me one moment. Alright, so unfortunately there's no pause options in World Arena replays, which is kind of disappointing. But apparently the first match I did for the week was actually the one that was kind of interesting. So main thing to note here is my opponent has a Zerida. And obviously Zerida gets all that extra movement, so right now her coverage is this. So to counteract that, I actually used Claret here to kind of cover my range. And literally this, I want to show this fight because it's all about when to engage. And this is one where I actually kind of showed patience and took my time trying to figure out exactly when and where to actually attack. One thing I also kind of realized during this match is I'm using Amelia as my tank here, and I'll actually send her forward. Originally I was intending her to be bait, but then I realized that Zerida can't actually deal with Amelia, because Amelia will strike first because her defense is higher than Zerida's. So I kind of realized that during the match. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I kind of just had her out there, and I was kind of just getting myself in position. I had to keep in mind of the Listel here, because the Listel would anti-heal me, so I was kind of just gradually inching forward. The goal here was to get my attack range where Zerida was, that way she couldn't get her extra movement. Demolish hit me a little bit and kind of debuffed me. She kind of moved down, and then I went straight for going after Landius here. And then I moved down here to kind of get more attack in. So thanks to the double strike, easy enough to deal with Landia. So now they have no tanks. So I can now kind of freely attack what I want to attack. So I move in, start dealing with Jafaniel next. Couldn't kill her, but it was enough to wound her. And she actually loses intelligence as her attack goes down. Obviously, Zerda would wreck her. But now I can kind of freely move forward and start putting the pressure on. And then they give up because they realize that my Amelia is immune to fixed damage. But yeah, so it was just kind of being patient. It was just kind of staying at the edge of their attack range, and I mean the fire was coming in from the right hand side, but I was kind of just waiting until I got my opening. When the Zerda moved down, I went ahead and just went straight for the kill at that point. I was going to kind of try to. I mean, another option is I could have shifted Claret down to try to keep pressure on the Zerda, because once that Zerda gets in my attack range, she wouldn't get the extra movement, and then she's really a lot less effective for assassinations. But alright, just wanted to show that off. We'll see if I get some decent matches for Apex in the future. I'm The Depressed Eeyore, Langrisser Mobile. See you guys later.